On today's episode, you'll hear from my guest, who is an experienced content marketer who's worked at both medium and enterprise level manufacturing companies. And together, we'll walk through his observations about what marketers do right and wrong when it comes to content marketing. We'll get in his head about important elements of developing a content strategy and how to convince leadership that this is an important area to invest in to begin with. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Coffey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Craig Coffey. He's the Content Strategy and Marketing Manager at Eaton. Welcome to the show, Craig.
Thanks for having me.
And the last time I saw you, which is actually where we met, was Content Marketing World last year. And we were both presenting. I think you were presenting on your research, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. That's true. And actually, I think the first time I saw you speak was at Content Marketing World several years ago when I was in Cleveland, and you were speaking on marketing to engineers, which is something that's near and dear to my heart.
So. Look at us, Content Marketing World regulars. When was your first year? I think you've gone more years than I have.
I have gone to every one. I am one of the few, the proud, and every now and again they take pity on me, let me speak in front of a bunch of much more learned people, and I enjoy the opportunity to hopefully drop some knowledge on folks. But yes. Yeah, I've been around since before Content Marketing World, or content marketing was even really a thing.
Wow, the OG. What year-ish was that?
God, I think it's going on 10 years now. So
yeah.
So yeah, we're 13 or 12, maybe something like that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Good for you.
Everyone's been in Cleveland except for last year in DC, and there was one time in Columbus because the Cleveland Convention Center was still being built. So
okay. And next up, San Diego.
San Diego.
Looking forward to that.
Me too. Gonna spend some extra time there.
Yeah, we're kind of getting tired of Cleveland. No offense to Cleveland. It's a nice town, but it's good to mix it up.
It's a good hometown, but honestly, Content Marketing World is a little bit more fun for me since I live in Cleveland. I actually can't get away from my regular life when I go to Content Marketing World when it's in Cleveland. Right. So I get to stretch my legs a little more when I'm in other towns. So I think it's a nice welcome change.
Good. Well, today we'll be talking about all things strategy surrounding content marketing. But before we do, I think it would be great to just hear a little bit about your career journey and what led you to your current role at Eaton.
Sure. So what a long road. So I got out of school in 1992 with a degree in English, which means I was immediately employed by the construction and bartending industry for a couple of years. I kicked around there for a little while, worked for an architect for a while, which was really my first B2B marketing job before I really even heard anybody talk about that as B2B marketing. Spent some time with the Caterpillar dealer network for the local dealer here in Ohio, went to a company called Parker Hannifin.
Oh, yeah.
From there, I went to a company called Lincoln Electric. And from Lincoln, I was after that, I was asked to join the team here at Eaton, and I've been here about 3 years. So long content marketing journey. Like I said, predating when content marketing was even a coined phrase, and have spent my entire career like kind of looking backwards at the tide. It was like I've been in B2B marketing my entire career, and I didn't really realize it probably until I was in it for 5 years. I think my first real exposure to label. Yeah, but like the first exposure to when it was actually a label was I attended it was the Business Marketing Association. I used to attend their annual meeting. And it was like the first time I went to that meeting was a huge eye opener. It was like, oh, I don't have to translate from consumer marketing to what I'm doing. people aren't talking about doing commercials, and it was a really nice change of pace to find a tribe to be to hang around with.
Yeah, I will never forget. So, as a baby marketer, I was at National Instruments planning 70 trade shows a year. So, that was my the core
Yeah.
function of my job, other than an annual conference. And Parker Hannifin had the coolest booths of like dinosaurs and all sorts of things, moving around to show their hydraulics. And that just always stuck with me of what a great way to demonstrate your products in such an interesting and engaging manner. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that what, like, kind of looking at it through the lens of content marketing, I think that's a better, like, showing a dinosaur that was in Jurassic Park as a way to demonstrate your hydraulics expertise is kind of a good storytelling technique.
oh
I
yeah.
mean, rather than show somebody, a hydraulic piston, hydraulic hose, actuator, show them a dinosaur that moves like a real dinosaur, and now you got my attention. I think that they had some really interesting stuff going on there.
And that's kind of that human element, right? It's not
Yeah.
B2B, it's B2B with humans that
Well, and
love
the fact that you
dinosaurs.
remember that, but you probably don't remember any specifications about any of the hydraulic actuators or cylinders they were probably hoping that somebody would buy. But they remember that aspect, which I think is one of the, like, I think you really hit on a core of that emotional reaction to content versus collateral, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Now, at Lincoln, I think of Lincoln as having a lot of very modern marketing compared to their peers at the time. Can you speak to what you guys were doing up to when you were there?
Well, that's gratifying because I think that we spent a lot of time looking at how we can be different than the competitors. I mean, we knew we had differentiated products, but in the sea of features and specifications, it's really hard to differentiate yourself. So I started looking outside, and I remember being blown away by the company Yeti, the cooler makers. And their approach to video was so interesting and different because one of the things I noticed is they never mentioned their product in any of the videos that they created in their Yeti Present series. Their products were always present, kind of as a supporting actor, not the main character,
Uh-huh.
and it allowed the story to take it allowed the story to unfold in a way that was really unobtrusive. So we did some interesting things at Lincoln that I think kind of took that philosophy and put it into kind of more of a B2B space, telling stories about our customers instead of about our products, knowing that our products were. I think the viewers and consumers of that content really forgave us for the fact that we had some marketing stuff inserted into it because the storytelling was good.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was like that's when I really started to think, as a writer, started thinking about mixed medium and how powerful video is, and very proud of the work we got to do there. We published a magazine, which again was my mandate for that magazine was this thing has got to look like something someone would buy at a newsstand, or it's not really doing its job. And we had plenty of opportunities to advertise our products in that magazine, but the stories and the content had to really take center stage because we wanted this to be something that people A would subscribe to and B would remember and have that emotional reaction to. And I think we accomplished it. I'm not sure the status of the magazine now. I think it's moved a little left of where or right or out away from where we originally started with it. But I think that's a struggle that anybody in your audience who's struggling with content is going to have, is that constant bringing people back to content versus collateral. That idea that you're going to have to do some convincing and continue to convince people that this is a great way to develop your brand, to promote your products in a way that has a deeper reaction than
And the
an
specs.
ad or a spec or a
Yeah.
data sheet or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, hold the phone. When you say magazine, do you mean like physically printed,
Yeah,
mailed, colorful magazine?
we actually printed a full color quarterly magazine called Arc Magazine. Our very first cover was a woman named Jessie Combs, who was a spokesperson for us, who unfortunately has since passed. She was the fastest woman on 4 wheels, and she actually died trying to achieve the world land speed record.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and it had a great run. And I think that one of the things we benefited from at Lincoln was we had a lot of kind of celebrities in the welding world, welding, automotive fabricating, Discovery Channel TV type guys that we were involved with. So we really had an easy path to using that magazine as a way to tell their stories and really kind of double down on that investment that we were making with them. And we put this magazine into the hands of readers by sending direct to their homes through subscription. But our biggest channel to market was at our distributor locations. So we would send a couple hundred to our distributors. A distributor would unbox them. And if you ever and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are going to relate to this if they sell through distribution. When your typical welder goes to pick up his consumables for the day, his welding wire, his gas or whatever, they basically come to a counter, they eat a shitty donut, they have a cup of coffee, and they wait. And our idea was, let's get them while they're waiting. Let's show them something that they'll relate to, that they'll react to. And we had a lot of hits, we had a lot of misses, but we know about the misses because customers would tell us about them. Like, hey, this thing you said about welding was wrong, or this tip that you gave was a little off, or and we actually had a tips and tricks area that we actually asked for submissions, and people really liked that. We got a lot of feedback from it. So that feedback loop was pretty helpful. But yeah, we designed it to be like an off-the-shelf magazine.
I like this train of thought and strategy behind those decisions, because I think about a typical task-oriented content marketer that's thinking, okay, we need 3 case studies a quarter and 2 white papers, and they're trying to, check boxes on an Excel spreadsheet. And instead of thinking case study mentality, you're thinking of, how do we tell these stories and then insert our products as part of them? 1, and then 2, what is the best form factor to reach our persona? Where will they be most captive? And I'm sure you had digital assets that also,
sure,
yeah, but this magazine, captured them at the right time, right place.
Yeah, I think we really saw print because it was, everything was digital. Obviously, we had to have a digital form for this as well, and we had a website. We had, because we had digital content, we had video that we wanted to show, and we had things like that. So, but print was breakthrough, because most people don't get anything they want in the mail. So when they get something they actually want or that's interesting, that can actually stop people for a couple seconds. I mean, and I think that's all it takes, is to say that, hey. And we were never really brand forward with our magazine. We never hid the fact that it was published by Lincoln, but we wanted to make it look as if, like, hey, this is something worth paying attention to because it's new, it's different. The photography was hot, the subject matter was interesting. The cover, the stories, the covers. We always had like a cover story and a feature story, and the cover story was always, obviously the cover, and it was like usually somebody we had a relationship with, and the feature story was usually something deeper. But not necessarily welding related, but just something that more thought-provoking and engaging. And we had lots of, and just like any magazine, we had to have repeatability to the content over and over.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I was lucky to have a good group working with me. We developed it all in-house. That'd be a tough undertaking to do with an outside agency because of the cost structure of it. But we also had a leadership team that was kind of open to the concept and was,
yeah, that's
let me kind of spread my wings on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So now at Eaton, you're responsible for an area of the business that maybe not everybody thinks of when they think of the Eaton brand, and that's Brightlayer, which is software, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's software, it's data related services, data. So Brightlayer so Eaton sells a lot of connected products. So, whether it's a pump or a transmission, we have a lot of products that are, or a breaker in your breaker box. We have a lot of products that basically spew out ones and zeros all day long. There's a lot of data that can be captured there. And over time, we've developed a number of software products to help our customers make sense of that data. We've got, custom APIs that we can provide to our customers. And Brightlayer is really a way for us to put an umbrella around all that data related information, data related products that we have, because we recognize that is how our customers are going to get through their next phase of evolution. It's how we're going to get through our next phase of evolution, is this digital journey, digital transformation. Again, your customers, or your listeners, as engineers and manufacturers, all know the challenges with aging infrastructure, with getting getting and acquiring and holding on to talent. And we really have to hedge, and we have to think about how we can be smarter with the application of technology in order to be as productive as we want to be, and continue to be more productive. It's something that philosophically at Eaton we're very behind. We have an entire organization dedicated to our own digital transformation efforts, and we know that there are a lot of our customers are like us. They're struggling with these issues, so we're looking for ways to make their life easier. And basically, that's kind of what Brightlayer is. It's all those things that are digital that are intended to help solve customer challenges.
Okay, so it sounds like this area is somewhat, I won't call it emerging, but it's a bigger focus at Eaton than maybe it has been in the past, would you say? I mean,
I
a
think
lot of awareness
we're
needed.
more vocally focused on it. I mean, I think there have been pockets of excellence around the organization, and we recognize that there are these pockets of excellence. And by putting a kind of a name to it and making it kind of a pillar of our organization, it allows us to bring everything together. And even though that, the development might happen in different areas of the organization, using the Brightlayer umbrella to bring it together helps us kind of coalesce the thinking around it. And I think it's been successful. I mean, like certainly Wall Street likes the approach. Our stock has been doing fantastic. Go buy Eaton stock if you can afford it. It's really expensive right now, which is good for us. But yeah, but it's interesting, and it's different because it's not a hardware product. So the way we approach it from a content perspective is a lot different than we'd approach something that you can actually physically touch and feel. So one of the things I spend a great deal of my time on is how do we establish our right to play in a digital space that we're not well known in. And you mentioned it earlier, one of the things I spoke about at Content Marketing World was some bespoke research that we commissioned so that we could demonstrate not our expertise, but our understanding of what the marketplace looks like. So we partnered with S&P Global Market Intelligence, and we developed this bespoke research to really tap into what's truly going on in the areas of digital transformation and energy transition with the customer segments that are most important to us. And we asked them the hard questions, and we used S&P as kind of our way to make sure the analytics was sound and believable and reasonable. And we're going to continue to publish that because I think that having that third party credibility is important to us. We know we're relatively new in most people's minds in this area. So having that S&P kind of backing it and saying, yep, these guys are, what these guys are publishing is the truth. And we're going to stand behind it was important to us. And I think it's been successful so far. And the really interesting thing, it's kind of the multiplying effect of doing this research, because now we have this body of work we can look at and say, well, that's a really interesting data point. How can we expose that data point as a piece of content and really blow it up and find an interesting opinion or a piece of thought leadership that can come out of that, and which can turn into more and more content. So it's this we'll produce this report every other year, but in that off year, we'll have a constant stream of content that is based on the report that allows us to have an opinion or to make an opinion or to conjecture about what's going on or to ask customers if this is what they're really feeling. And we can expose that content in so many different ways, whether it's infographics or listicles or videos or social content. And it's been a really good investment. I think that if you looked at the investment from a top line, it looks expensive, but when you start breaking down the number of things we get out of it, from a line item standpoint, it actually gets to be kind of a really good value to us.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it, particularly over a 2-year period. And, marketers, we get tired of our own content and data long before the audience does, right? That may have not seen it the first or the second time it was out there. So to have it be repurposed in so many different ways is golden, really.
Yeah. And it was, I think that going back to your earlier comment about having to be creative, not wanting to just follow the trap of just, I've got to grind out 3 case studies and we got to do this. I mean, there's a time and place for that, but I think that the companies that are doing it really well are looking for ways to do something that's breakthrough. And I hate to say like I'm a student of marketing or a student of content marketing, but you got to look when you look outside your own industry, or look out I get inspired by lots of things in the consumer industry, and I think about, well, how it's not a one-to-one comparison, but how can I bring that forward into the stuff that we're doing? How can I start to think more like my end consumer, and what's going to how do we capture somebody's attention? We're all fighting for that. You got to get creative, and it takes a village. I mean, it really takes a company that trusts, that hires people for the right reason, and I think that's I've been really lucky to have hit a couple of those in my career.
Well, and it sounds like these companies have put you in the right role, because you are a student and master practitioner at content marketing. And I want to understand why over your career, why content marketing has been such a priority for you, and why you feel like as marketers we should invest there over other things or tactics. So philosophically, how do you think about content marketing as you think about the marketing mix as a whole?
Sure. So I think that maybe, and thank you for the kind words. Content marketing master, I think is a little extreme. I enjoy it. I think that my background as a writer, so content marketing appeals to me from that standpoint. My experience from a multimedia standpoint, and telling long form stories and developing long form content, it makes it very interesting. But I think the best reason to invest in content marketing is because you're investing in an audience that wants to hear from you, versus trying to reach an audience that will tolerate hearing from you. And I differentiate audience from a database or a list of emails that you have collected, or phone numbers that you've collected over the years, because it's different. Audiences will react to you, or they'll respond to you. They'll maybe even tell you what they want to hear from you. And that's different. And it's one of those things, like, once you got it, but when you start getting strong reactions to things you're putting out, that's coming from people that are not just your employees, that's a really positive sign that you're developing an audience. But in order to develop an audience, you have to develop a voice. And these things are different. And I think you stated it correctly. It's an investment. This is not something that you can just crank out and hope it works. There's a learning curve. There's a education curve that has to happen within a lot of organizations. And but I honestly think that because you're getting to the critical part is creating an audience that you can go back, and implicit to that audience is trust. They trust that you're not going to carpet bomb them with product information. They trust that when you mention product, it's in the context of their challenges, not in the context of what you want to sell that day.
Yeah. And
it's important when there's trust there that neither side exploit it. I mean, it's a relationship at that point. So that's a little touchy-feely for a lot of engineering and manufacturing companies, but it's true. And I think done well, it works.
No, I think trust is absolutely imperative. When you think about the decisions engineers need to make, are sometimes, it could mean life or death for someone. I mean,
For sure.
look at all the Boeing stuff going on right
Yeah.
now, right? And if that doesn't make a case for selecting the right components and products and test equipment, for that matter, and having the right processes. And so trust is huge. And so building that trust, showing your credibility, is paramount, and content really has a lot to do with that, most to do with that. And then how you execute on that strategy, of course. What are some misconceptions about content marketing that you've heard or that you've experienced?
I can even what 10 or 12 years into this content marketing journey that we've been on, we've all been on since Joe Polizzi was so famously coined the phrase. I still hear, I actually now hear people using content and collateral interchangeably, and it's a bit of a frustration because, and I don't want to set it up like one is better than the other or one is more important than the other, because done correctly they have to work together. But collateral is that stuff that allows you to qualify your product. And I think content is what can help you differentiate your product and differentiate your understanding of your customers' needs. And I think that that's really the tipping point. I don't think it's necessarily as easy as long form versus short form, because you can write a really good social post that's shorter than a spec sheet would be. It's really more, and it's not as easy as inbound versus outbound, but more often than not, Collateral is your outbound tool and content is your inbound tool. I get a little frustrated when I hear those terms being used interchangeably, but there's a relationship there. And the relationship is around where the product is, and content allows you to tell the story, and Collateral kind of gives you that necessary, but maybe not necessary evil, but necessary but evil opportunity to get that get something about that product on paper.
Yeah, it's a table stake, having
Totally.
the specs available, having those key dimensions, CAD drawings, whatever it is,
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
it's a
let's be
component.
honest. I mean, we like in the vast majority of B2B, especially manufacturing and industrial companies, marketing is generally beholden to the sales organization. I'm not saying that's 100% of the time. I've worked in an organization, but I would say in my career, Eaton is the only organization where marketing and sales are separate. So when you have that, that, and when sales is the number one goal, you have to give salespeople the tools they need to get their job done.
Mhm.
And we all know from our buying experience that the easiest way to get a salesperson off your back is to say, well, send me a spec sheet on that. And then I'm looking at buying a car right now, and God, it's the worst experience, because I'm already qualified. Like I know what I want. I'm just looking for the actual, I've done all their work for them. And boy, we really haven't made it easy in the auto industry. But B2B organizations don't have that. So you have to give them the tools so they have the opportunity to follow up. But at some point, and maybe this is where the script gets flipped a little bit, if done well, I really believe that content is where they'll qualify you before you qualify them. Mm-hmm. So, it's that, again, back to the inbound, like what are people putting in their Google search bar in order to find them? And it's probably not send me spec sheet on XYZ product. It's usually help me solve XYZ problem.
Yeah.
And that's our opportunity to have that overlap between product collateral and product content. Is where we start talking about the customer problem and the resolution to it, that can then lead further down the funnel into the sales engagement, and and really kind of like I said, further funnel down funnel opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the process of creating that content, and specifically, I'd like to get in your head about developing a strategy. So whether it's a campaign and you want to do a content program, we can start at that level, or look broadly across, annual or quarterly planning. But who should gather together, and what type of homework or advanced preparation should that marketer do before ever gathering people into a room? What does it look
like I said, there's going to be some education that's going to need to happen, and maybe early in the process is not the time to educate somebody on what content marketing is. I mean, it shouldn't be that kind of an opportunity. But let's work from that, kind of a baseline. So let's assume we're doing a new product introduction.
Okay.
There's a reason that your company invested significant R&D dollars into that product. And someone who knows what that reason is and the story behind that is where I would start. And the people in the room should be the people who know that story, who can tell that story well. Now, I think we've all been through product developments where we have a good idea in the beginning about what a product's going to be, and it gets, mutilated as the process goes on, because, you can't afford to build the product you want, or it won't be marketable at the price it'd have to be by the time you came out the other end. But let's assume that the product you envisioned actually came out the other end as it was planned to be. Someone knows why that product was important to have, either in your portfolio as a gap filler or in the competitive market space, so that it could be, so we could, have a competitive space in that market. A feature that was missing in other similar type products, and some voice of customer that maybe brought that all to life. That exists in someone's head or on paper someplace, hopefully on paper as part of a new product development process. To me, that's where content starts. I mean, what comes out at the end and ends up being everybody focuses on, we got to get the specifications out, and we got to show people what this thing can actually do. But that story is important because you develop that to meet a need for a customer, for a persona, for somebody who actually is going to use that product.
Mhm.
And that's what they're going to be like. That's what they're looking for every day when they're on their Google search is like, why won't somebody just make a product that does this? And if you can actually say, we're the guys who did that, that's where I would start. I know it's probably not a perfect scenario there, but you got, and if it's let's just say you're developing, your job is to develop content more at the brand level. Someone who's going to be telling your brand story to someone every day needs to be involved in that storytelling, because it's got to feel authentic to that person who's the storyteller, or who's going to be delivering the story, not necessarily developing the story. And it's got to be something that is unique, and it can't be also. I mean, I think too many companies spend time talking about their company history and not their company future, and I think that's not. And the company history does not a great story make, but what you envision the company to be going forward is where people start getting excited, and that's where.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. And
Yeah.
so when companies do that right, they're overly concerned about building credibility upon the past rather than upon what they're saying about present and future. So
Yeah, and every company's guilty of it, and and that comes from a place of pride, and that should be celebrated too. But it can be overdone.
yeah.
I don't care that that Ford made the first Model T in whatever 1890. I want to know if the engine's going to blow up if I buy a Mustang, and I rev it to 25 million RPMs. So
Yeah.
that's what I care about now.
Yeah. So before developing a content plan, let's say of, like what should we create? First, we need positioning and a narrative for that product. Let's talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah. So I think that starts with the who. Like, who are you talking to? And a lot of people, again, as your savvy content marketers will know, the first response to that will be, well, it's our customers. We want to reach our customers. Well, customers is not it's not a one size fits all solution. And getting into persona development might be something that your engineers will tolerate. I know that my engineers would never tolerate it, but I just try to get them to visualize the guy or gal that is either buying, influencing, specifying, or or is the final selector of products, and trying to get into their head about what is. I think that an interesting way to go is what motivates them. And so in that case, going back to who should be in the room, the person who is closest to the customer should start to help answer those questions, or closer to that persona type. This person should start answering those questions. And sometimes you've got to help the field sales people think like marketers that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you start tapping into their hierarchy needs, I mean, you mentioned there's an engineer specifying a product at Boeing, and the implications of that can be pretty scary. So one of the motivations could be, I want to avoid risk at all costs. That's an important thing to know. And that can be an important pillar to your content. One thing people could be motivated by is, I want to get my next promotion. I mean, what's their hierarchy of needs? What do they really like? And some of it is, there's a little bit of guesswork that happens there, but I think once you start to go through this process, and especially if you have people who have a lot of experience in the room, dealing with the sales process and the number of people you're dealing with through, up into the supply chain area. If you're dealing with a buyer in your supply chain area, that's going to be, we want total cost of ownership, or we want lowest possible price. There's not a lot of content that probably is going to be able to be delivered around that. But if you can get to all the other people to make sure that you are the only presumptive selection in that process,
Yeah.
then the supply chain guy is he's just going to beat you up on price as best he can, knowing he's got to, getting to people like what really motivates them is important. And some of it can, there can be some motivation can be around credibility, making the right decision. I don't know. I think there's lots to unpack there.
Yeah, there are. And I like what you, how you distinguish, like, there's lots of personas involved on the buying team, at the life cycle of purchasing this product. However, Who's that specifier? Who's going to be the one to find you, to recommend you, and putting more emphasis perhaps on those people than these secondary or tertiary personas like, purchasing Penny, who maybe you do need some content for that person that you give to sales, but it's not going to be the main focus of your campaign necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to check. I think there's some things you got to check the box on, and maybe that's where collateral is the appropriate tool for that versus content. Um, but yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, and especially in a B2B environment, it's very rare that the user of the product is also going to be the buyer of the product. We saw that in the welding industry all the time. Like, think about your typical commercial or your typical fabricator on on a job site building a building. You've got a guy who's got a very distinct opinion on the value of the equipment that he's using and what it's got to do, but he's not stroking the check for it.
Right.
And sometimes that's at a premium. So how do you tell that value story? And I think you tell it through, for me, we told it through their eyes, not through our eyes. I mean, we got literally in the trenches with them, and we found out what was really important to them. And our content tried to have that customer point of view, the customer challenge point of view, versus, I don't think that there's a welder out there. Well, I'm not going to say that. There's probably a lot who do, but who really care that much about the fact that that the circuit breaker is potted in trade. And they don't care. Like, I didn't even know what that meant. I was pretty sure that nobody knew what it meant, but it was something really important in manufacturing. So we put it in there. What they cared about is that it would not short out if they were in mud puddle. That's what they care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes taking those features or those specifications and turning them into features and benefits is a place that you can start to be a little smarter about developing content.
When is it important to identify a spokesperson or a face to a content program? Is that something you do often, or you do in certain situations?
That's something I think about a lot, especially in the position we are at Eaton. And I think the snippy answer to that is when the time is right. But I think sometimes those personalities can become self-evident. You'll find people, I mean, I love people that have opinions. And I think that there's a huge source of a wellspring of content when their opinion isn't the mainstream opinion. But there's a delicate balance there too. Too controversial and you look like a crackpot. But I think that, to me, the right mix of attributes for a spokesperson or somebody who's got time in the industry enough that they are not regurgitating what other people are thinking, but they understand what the kind of prevailing thinking is. There's somebody who are willing to put their opinion out there, which is, you would think a lot of people do that privately, but to actually write something or get in front of an audience and say something is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah. Well, it's brave, and it also takes time, right? It's real easy to just sort of slap your name on something. It's different to have a thoughtful response or opinion out there.
Well, and I think that's the third leg of the stool, is they've got to be able to articulate their opinion very well to people who would seek to shoot holes in it. And maybe part of that is the willingness to have a thoughtful debate about their point of view. And I will say that's a very tough thing it's a tough mix to find. And God bless you when you can. We're really lucky at Eaton to have just a huge well of information. And I think the challenge, but we're also a very large organization. We've got 90,000 employees, 93,000 employees. So one of the challenges that I have, like going back to my example with our research, is if I find a really interesting data point in that research, my first question to my boss is, okay, who can we ask if this is who can we press on this with? Who can we ask if this is the right way to go, the wrong way to go? And some of that is you learn through tribal knowledge. And it's great. I mean, you have to, part of the content marketer's job is to network and find people who can find people, or find people who know people. But I think within the leadership of an organization, there should be the flexibility and the desire to have people with good and strong opinions to put their good and strong opinions out there. Now, on balance, we have some restrictions to that as a publicly traded company. We're not going to talk about forward-looking statements where there's times of year that, like when earnings are being announced, that we want to be pretty quiet on stuff. But, boy, in my mind's eye, I think about the opportunity, going back to like the sales enablement side of things, the opportunities that would present themselves if more companies were willing to let leadership in their companies go out and speak at organizations about things that are important. And because, God, even going back to my experience with B2B marketing, you go to these conferences and you hear these guys and you go, wow, I'd love to go work for that guy, because it seems like they really gotten switched on. And I think that something similar happens when you talk about people who have good opinions or are willing to speak in front of people. They go, boy, I'd like to go work with them. Or, and I think that is, there's so much gold there. And then from a content perspective, there's so many ways to capitalize on someone who's willing to have opinions.
Very good. Well, even for smaller companies, finding that person that is authentically drawn to the subject matter and passionate about it. Like you said, that's the magic combination. And sometimes there just isn't that person, and trying to force it may be worse than not doing it at all.
I agree. You can't force it. You can't put somebody in a situation where they don't have that comfort. And here it's interesting is like, we are in, I would say, maybe the not sexiest segment of the world. I mean, we're doing industrial B2B marketing.
Well, come on.
I know, but I still every day find people who are immensely passionate about the things that they do. And about stuff that I would think that would be so mundane and would turn off the average person. There are audiences for everything. If there's a job out there, there's an audience for that, for people doing that job who are also passionate about it and would like to know they aren't alone. I mean, I think that, God, I get excited about the opportunity to talk to people who are excited about talking about the nerdy stuff that sometimes I have to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think that, to the folks that pay attention to this podcast, I'm sure sometimes they think, boy, I'd really like to go work for an agency or something that I can do all this like cool, sexy B2C work. Yeah, that's all well and good, but our work is super necessary. It might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but it's necessary and it's interesting and it's evolving. And I find there's a lot of exciting things there. I mean, I'm smiling just thinking about it, but that's the kind of stuff that gets you up in the morning every day. You gotta find the cool stuff and the cool people.
Absolutely. It's funny. Just this morning, I had a knock on the door. It's the power company. They needed to do something. And I said, can you get it done before this podcast starts? And I said, because I have a podcast, he goes, wait, podcast? Oh, what's your podcast? And I was like, content marketing engineered. Oh, okay, cool. But for those
put it on right behind Travis Kelce's podcast, I'm sure.
Right. Just behind that. Well, speaking of marketers in this industry, what's some parting advice here? They're building content strategies, trying to convince leadership to invest in this area, trying to work with sales, getting beyond product specs to telling that story. There's a lot here that we've covered. So what are just some pieces of advice in this?
Well, I'd say if you're listening to this podcast, then you've already taken a step forward. Like you're interested enough to spend your own time thinking about work and trying to get better at it. If you're at a top tier organization in your market, then you're probably already doing good work and you're getting good ideas and you're moving forward. If you are struggling with that at the company that you work for, find a company who's doing it great, and show people the value of it. I think that there is a direct correlation to the companies that do content marketing really well and the companies that do really well in our space, in engineering and manufacturing. I mean, I think about the folks that share Eaton space, and they're all excellent in different ways at content marketing. And their stock prices reflect it and their earnings reflect it. I don't think that's an accident. And I think that once you start to draw those parallels, especially if you're struggling in your organization, to get people kind of off of their, off of what they've always done, and start showing them that if we want to be like XYZ company, we need to start acting and doing the things that XYZ company does. They probably wouldn't fight about that if you were talking about accounting practices or finance or manufacturing or industry 4.0 or all the things that are, or their digital transformation efforts. Why would they resist looking at marketing differently if that's what can make a big change for them and get them on the map? Yeah. And unfortunately for marketers, and this is the fight we always have to fight, it's not going to be swapping your current role for something new for a decent amount of time. You're probably gonna have to do both things and show that one has more value than the other, or that maybe there's an opportunity for investing in more talent in your organization so you can do both. But just be patient. You'll get there. Marketing has come a long way. God, we haven't even touched on things like generative AI and the opportunities that's going to present for organizations. Yeah. And God knows there's probably a billion other podcasts that will talk about that. So we can table that for another day. But things are moving in the right direction from a content perspective. And it is some, like I said, I think if you look at the companies that do it well, it's the company's balance sheets reflect the fact that they do content marketing well. It's not an accident, it's on purpose. And that's what I would say. So stay the course. And if at the end of the day, you really, really, really are having a hard time at your company getting this across, there are lots of good companies looking for good talent. So, when at first you don't succeed, try again, but then quit. Like, don't be a damn fool about it.
and then find a place that
find a place that appreciates what you have to offer and what your philosophy is, because there's lots of them out there, and we're literally the opportunities are out there, and they're good opportunities.
Yeah. Craig, I also see this generational shift in leadership and industrial companies that's helping to usher in this modern way of doing marketing. I say modern a little facetiously because it's been around for a long time now, but I think as we see that generational shift, there's more receptiveness to more digital marketing, more content strategy first. So I have
and our industry, let's be honest. I mean, we're laggards in a lot of ways, but the opportunity to be behind is that you can see what's come before. So like I said, we're getting closer and closer to our customers. And we're getting a better understanding of their buying habits, their behaviors. And that comes from consumer marketing. And, the line is getting more and more blurry every day. So lots to learn from companies that have done it well. And like I said earlier, that might be outside of our space, but, find a brand you love and follow them religiously, find out what they're doing. And, it's
buy
okay
more
to be
Yeti. No.
Yeah. Well, interesting. So here's something interesting I love to point out about Yeti. Now, this data might be a little old. The only piece of intellectual property that Yeti owns, the only thing that can't be reproduced, is the magnetic lid on their tumblers.
That's it.
That's their own. They get a premium for their product 100% based only on their brand efforts. And I would say of their brand efforts, their best efforts are their long form content efforts. And I like, if you have a slow day, go check them out because they're beautiful stories.
They are. I received the magazine, the Yeti magazine. So
I know
exactly what you're
talking about. And I wish they would put more of them out, but so
very good. Well, Craig, where can people connect with you and learn more about Eaton Brightlayer?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and obviously you can always go to Eaton.com and learn a lot about Brightlayer. We're a constant content engine. I'll promise to bring more stuff out as we go. I'm on LinkedIn. You can catch me at B2B in CLE on LinkedIn. I think that's also my Twitter handle, but I'm not a huge tweeter. Twitterer, Xer. What do we call now?
Yeah.
What do we do now?
I mean, I guess we're Xers that are Xers. I don't know.
X Twitters. Twitter Xers? I don't know.
We'll find you on LinkedIn, and I'll
find me on
link
LinkedIn
in the show notes too.
Yeah, great.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Greg. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to Content Marketing World this year, and I would love to talk to more people.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.